Mainstream science and organized religion have a lot of things in common. Now, when I say science, I mean the system of education itself, because if you see fundamentally, it's the education system that disagrees with the narrative of the religions of the major uh, three Abrahamic religions of the world, and of course other Eastern religions as well. But predominantly it is disagrees with the story of creation, the shape of the earth, and the whole setup of the Abrahamic world. It goes absolutely against it, and it negates everything that the church has put through as a part of theology, and starts fresh with a brand new theory of creation, and how a modern human being came into existence, leaving God and the Creator totally out of the picture. I'm not saying that uh, the Abrahamic or any religions are rather really a word of God. Maybe it's inspired by God, but they are all created at some point or the other. If you are to believe that they are really created by a divine creator, then you are a gullible person that can be swayed either way of either side of the spectrum. So um, the people who own the people who have created majority of the religions of the world, the families, when I say the people, I mean the ideologies and the families who are behind creating the major Abrahamic religions of the world, are also the same families who are behind creating the education system of the world. um, those families have ruled the world for thousands of years. The show of politics that we see, of democracy, communism, presidential rule, dictatorship, you name it. It's just a way of conducting business for the people who own the world, and they have owned it since at least 3-4 thousand years. Okay, at least since since the since the inception of Phoenicia, I would say that the world has been owned by a few handful of families, and oligarchy is the only way that the world has been run ever since then. All the other isms and all the other forms of rulerships are just offshoots of oligarchy. They're just branches of oligarchy. Okay, so the people who own the major religions of the world, people who run the ideologies of the major religions of the world, are the same people who run the education systems as well. Now, you might say, how is that possible? Because on the face of it, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which are the three Abrahamic religions, are almost against each other. I mean, everyone is against Jews, because Jews were the first people who, actually, that's how it is in every religion, right? The people who started everything, the people who had the most Gnostics, who had the most enlightened beings, but also had, on the contrary, the most corrupt beings also, because humans are humans anyways. But Jews, and I would even say the Hindus, or the Eastern pagans, have suffered the most politically in today's world, because they are the oldest, and the powers to be want to destroy the old knowledge, and their whole identity depends on the mass population forgetting history, and knowing their version of history, and their version of history is the Abrahamic history, I mean. And they want you to forget every other version of history. But there were still people who didn't believe in their narrative, especially after the invention of the printing press and the so-called Renaissance in the European era. people stopped believing in churches and started, spreading their own doctrines and gospels and and theories and stuff like that, and um to still establish an upper hand over all these theories. The new system of education, or the new religion of education, was invented. Now, I'm not saying that everything that we know that comes through education is nonsense. It's not. But that's also the case with religion, right? Like, let's say washing hands and your feet before eating your food is part of your religion. I mean, yes, it is a good practice to follow, and it will keep you healthy, sanitized, and safe from diseases and whatnot. But then you couldn't say that if you didn't know, if you weren't part of that religion, you wouldn't have known to wash your hands and feet, right? Like, if you were a logical person, and if you knew reality well enough, you would wash your hands and feet regardless if you are following a religion or not. So that type of basic credit that we give to education, actually, what we're really giving credit is to literacy. Okay, now literacy, education, and knowledge, these three things are different than each other. Literacy is just knowing how to read and write, and knowing how to communicate without using your vocal cord. Okay, that's literacy. Knowledge, or rather education, comes after literacy. Okay, you have to first be some form of literate, then to be educated. And education could could be different than to truth or knowledge. Okay, so education is information or um, mannerisms to become a citizen. I will call that as an education. What is an education? Education is the information and the knowledge that you acquire to become an efficient citizen. What is a citizen? A citizen is a person who wakes up in the morning, goes to work, works for like 8 to 10 hours without any revolt, comes home, pays taxes, uh, gets married, produces children for the next generation of workers, puts his children to school, uh, also programs his children for being exactly like him, and discourages them for behaving anything differently, and then follows basically everything that's been told to him by the society. And that's basically a citizen, a good follower. A sheeple is a good citizen. Okay, and then education is the medium of achieving good citizens. And then knowledge is something entirely different. Knowledge is experiential. Okay, you cannot acquire knowledge sitting in a classroom. Yes, you can acquire part of the knowledge, you can acquire a theory, but then it it won't make sense, and it will not be a complete puzzle in your head, unless the practical part of it is complete, or the application part of it is complete by your own self. Okay, observing an application also would not help in developing a knowledge. Even observing an application would still be education, but doing that application yourself then can be called knowledge. And then further, the knowledge can be converted into a skill, or something else as well. Education also can be converted into a skill, but knowledge, if you have, then that skill just has a different level of grade. I mean, it's just on a different grade of scale. So differentiate these things, and try to differentiate between these three things. Most mainstream religions are education, they are not knowledge. Okay, try to analyze them and try to see forget about the narrative of the story. Okay, forget about the story part in itself, forget about the actors, forget about the heroes, and forget about the prerogative, and forget about the plot itself, but just focus on the message, focus on the information, focus on the knowledge, and see what are you able to squeeze out from it. If nothing is the answer, or if the answer is, if the derivative doesn't apply to your life today, or it's not applicable to your material world, practical world around you, then it's education at some point, and it's some type of a historical narrative, programming, information. You cannot call that as a knowledge, okay, as a fact, or as a truth of life. And that's the reason I started with saying that education is also a form of modern day religion, because the setup is exactly the same, that you are taught by a new age priest. The communication is one way, like the education is mostly one way. For example, like uh, you cannot refute an education theory, you cannot refute a scientific theory and still pass your course. You cannot deny what's being taught to you and still pass your course. Okay, you're going to fail that course, and that's the only way forward. The world is in such control of the people who own it that unless you go through the mainstream education system, you're basically out of a job. You have no prospect, practically zero prospects of any job, if you haven't been through the mainstream education system. As if there's no other ways of education, there's no other ways of knowledge. And to be honest, most jobs that we are doing inside the city, which pay exorbitant amount of money, do not really require education whatsoever. They, what they need is literacy, and they need in like education of human behavior. Like they need information about how humans interact with each other. They need some information about statistics. They need some information about some other things. But everything else that's been taught in school for years, that we spent like almost 15-20 years in primary and secondary education, we don't use any of it in our in the jobs that we do at the moment. So um to that also coincides a lot with the mainstream religion. Just like most of the things that you read in the book are never really applicable to your real life, and they're just as a part of a story that however, how to grow corn, how to reap a seed, and how to basically understand the material nature of reality, you have to do it your own self. It's not written in any religious book whatsoever. So that's why I say that there are a lot of similarities between religion and education, and that's what makes the statement also true, that today's science or today's education will be tomorrow's religion, because today's religion was also education at some point. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. Today's education will be tomorrow's religion, because today's religion was also education at some point. Okay, it was really education. Like call it it's even today, actually, even religious degrees are even considered as degrees today. But that's a different story, that you wouldn't get a job with that degree, but you could still go to a seminary and graduate, like, and pass out as a graduate from a seminary and have a degree. You could go to an Islamic school or a madrasa, and you can still have a degree when you pass out from it. You wouldn't have any knowledge to move around in the real world, but you would have a paper degree, which actually most of college degrees also are, right? Like if you step out of the matrix that you're living inside, this the boundaries of the city walls that you're living inside, the education degree that you have earned from your college is also worthless, right? It's only within the walls of these societies, and even in that society, it's a very limited scope of very limited scope of field of work that you work in, that your expertise lie in. Let's say you're an accountant. Imagine how small is the scope of your vision, of your knowledge. Also, how can you even call that as knowledge, right? Like it's just information to feed your family, to become just another cog in the machinery, in this giant, um, this ginormous, how can I say, mechanical whale of a system that's been created by the global oligarchs. And that's why looking for truth, I mean, if you're a logical person, if you and let me tell you that even if you think you are not, or rather, even if you think you are, you probably are not. Okay. uh, if you are a logical person, and if you look at everything with pure logic, without having any perception goggles on your eyes, any perception goggle put by education, society, sci-fi movies, mainstream media, religious societies, all of these, like, just if you once you remove if you look at the world after removing all of your perception goggles, and if you are an absolutely logical person, that's the only time when you are going to be anywhere even close to knowledge or the truth. But otherwise, if you're following either of the ideologies, either if you're a left leaning or a right leaning person, if you're a religious or a scientific person, if you're educated or non educated person, you're going to fall on the same side of the spectrum, which is of being controlled, of being told what to feel, what to do, and how to react. Okay, if you have to be a free person, you have to be knowledgeable, and for you to be knowledgeable, you have to know the truth, and for you to know the truth, you have to be 100% absolutely logical in your thinking. When I say logical, I mean follow the laws of let's say Hermes. I wouldn't say laws of physics, but every cause has an effect. Every effect has a cause. Coincidence is merely a cause not recognized. Okay, there are no coincidences. Coincidence is a cause that is not recognized. So realize the causes behind the effects that you see around the world. Understand the true nature of reality. Know yourself, know your surroundings, know who you are, and then you won't be able to, like, nobody can push you around after that. Okay. Education is new age religion, and that's why today's education will be tomorrow's religion, or today's science will be tomorrow's religion, just like today's religion is yesterday's science or yesterday's education. Hope you have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.